B-Bad and Brandon.
On the platform podcast, and I would like to welcome Mr. Brian Ellicott. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Hello. That's right, yep. Fine.
Perfect. Now, as we mentioned in our email, I should work out, what accent is that? Do you have an accent?
Yeah, I do. So I'm originally from the southwest of England, from a place called Torquay. Because I've been here for just over 10 years now, I've got like a weird hybrid.
You got a hybrid.
Aussie twang, where I've still got kind of English twang as well. So.
Yeah, I love that. You're bringing the best of both worlds there. Now, mate, we run a very loose podcast. There's nothing too official.
No, nothing's official.
Nothing's really official, apart from our opening question, and that is Mr. Brian. I'll let Johnny give you the instructions.
Mr. Brian, sir, you have 21 sounds and or words, and the question is, you can use those 21 sounds or words to complete. The answer is who you are and what you do.
So I'm Brian, and I help people to build strong, robust, and pain-free lower backs.
That was a brilliant 21 words.
Yeah, I like it, bro.
That was very yeah. Now, interesting fact for the listeners is actually I found you because I was driving past your studio in Bowen Hills here in Brisbane, and I just was stopped at the lights, and I was like, Brisbane back pain. This thing, like, why haven't I heard of this before? And your logo, correct me if I'm wrong, is a bone crossed with a barbell.
That's it. So you got like a spine, and then you got two cross barbells.
Yeah. I was like, this
cool.
is very interesting, and I needed to talk to more. Obviously, myself and Johnny, strength coaches within the powerlifting industry, we see a lot of low back injuries. A lot of people come to us with around the the complaining of back pain, and it's differing in severities. And I was quite interested, and I looked on your website, found you, and you got some absolute great testimonials for what you're doing over there. So tell us a bit about the program.
Okay, like how it started or what I do?
Yeah, man.
Where'd you kick off, bro?
Yeah, where'd you start, man?
Okay. So I started originally back in... So I've been a coach now since about 2005, 2006.
Yep.
I've done the whole gambit. So I started off as a personal trainer, did some strength and conditioning courses back in the UK, then got into sort of like corrective exercise type work. Obviously, like you get a lot of people that come into the gym that have got... It's very rare these days someone will come in and they have got some sort of niggle or some sort of problem. So obviously just to kind of add to my toolkit, having a bit of basic understanding with sort of, corrective exercise is going to help. And then sort of 2012, 2013, so I was in Brisbane for about a year beforehand, and then me and the wife moved down to Sydney. We were there for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was working at a gym in city centre. And every Saturday, they used to have like a strongman sort of training class where sort of 20 to 30 people would turn up. You get partnered up, and we'd have like, farmers carries, medicine ball throws, yoke walks, all that sort of jazz, all the stuff you think would be highly suspicious for a back injury, but was fine.
Yep.
And then the last exercise for me and the guy I was training with, we were on a 45-degree leg press.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of going all right, and also because I was a new guy, the guy who was taking the class, Clinton, was like, I thought I'd better haze him. And he threw an extra red 25-kilo Ellicott on each side of the leg press when I was in the bottom position.
Oh, good.
So I pressed it up, and there wasn't like a pop or a click or an instant shoot of pain, but it felt like someone had taken, like a lukewarm cup of tea or coffee and poured it down one side of my back.
Oh, dear.
So rack the weight, stand up, and was just like, what the hell is that? Like, again, it wasn't painful at that point. I was just like, that's really weird. So I'm, cut my session short. Hopefully I wouldn't done too much damage.
Fuck.
That was on a Saturday morning.
Oh, yeah. How was the Sunday morning, mate?
Sunday morning, it took me 25 minutes to get out of bed.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And when I did eventually get out of bed, I was just like hunched like this, all over to one side.
Oh, fuck.
And I couldn't even hold myself up. I had to use one hand on my thigh at all times to kind of,
Oh, fuck.
like support myself.
Fuck
So
me.
I was like, Jesus, what have I done to myself?
Yep. That's bad.
So then after that there was a 6-week period of just dealing with people that were like, oh yeah, it's definitely this, it's definitely that. So chiros, physios, all the rest of it. I basically realised that 99% of them are utterly fucking useless if you get into real trouble. And just out of pure anger and hatred, I was like, I'm gonna sort this out myself.
Yep.
And when I do, I'm going to start sort of helping other people, because I found a lot of other people were in the same sort of boat where they'd go to see these experts, and the problem would either get worse, or it would just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And these, the experts you go and see wouldn't really have concrete answers for them.
100%.
So just like, oh, just don't train, or don't do this, or don't do that. But we couldn't really understand what was going on. So took a deep dive into, hopefully you guys have heard of a guy called Professor Stewart Mcgill.
Yep.
You guys heard of him?
Yeah,
100%.
Yep.
Yep.
So took a deep dive into all of his books.
Yep.
And I think what helps me, because a lot of people remark that I'm really good at teaching rehab exercises, is that I learnt the hard way. So for example, Professor McGill has his big 3 exercises, which seem pretty small, easy and innocuous. But for example, like a McGill curl, if I was a millimetre wrong, or I did one too many reps that I wasn't ready for, my entire back would light up like a Christmas tree. I'd be back to square one.
Fuck me,
So
bro.
I had to learn the hard way the importance of not just perfect, practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. And you have to be a millimetre precise to get the best out of those exercises and not re-injure yourself. So went through that. So already I'd wasted 6 weeks with a couple of physios, a couple of chiros. 2 weeks of doing the McGill stuff. I was back in the gym, albeit lifting very gingerly. And then there was a funny moment. I was training in this gym, and I was working at. I had a trap bar, so I've come back from literally not being able to stand up straight to just have 20 kilos either side of a trap bar and just do sets of 12 a deadlift. And I can remember one of the power lifters was talking to his mate, and it was just like this. He's like, why is this guy lifting like a skirt?
Wow.
It's just like, fuck you, buddy.
Absolute troll.
So it's just one of those ones. It teaches me 2 things. One is, a lot of people that you go to for help with back pain are utterly fucking useless. And people who've never had back pain just can't empathize with you at all as to how bad it is.
Mate, you make an absolute brilliant point there. It's like, you obviously, talk about Professor McGill, who's probably the pioneer of the back pain, in our industry. But you go to we see it so many times, and I've ranted about it before, but the amount of physios and chiros, and we're not saying all physios or chiros are bad. There are some really good ones out there, but a lot of them just have no idea. And their first point of contact is, nah, stop. Just stop. But we know that if a back injury, a lower back, if you have a disc bulge, which it sounds like you did, if you stop moving...
Well, I had 2 disc bulges and 1 herniated disc.
Oh,
yeah.
You did a good job,
trifecta,
sir.
bro.
Yeah, bro.
Oh, yeah.
We know that as soon as you stop moving, you've put your progress back X amount. Like, obviously, there's a time for the inflammation response to occur.
Well, what I would say, before you make any decisions with any sort of rehab, the answer always, it depends. So I definitely prefer people to be doing something, but we have to be aware of that it's exactly the right thing for the right person at the right time. So anyone who's done any of the McGill courses or study McGill's work, the sort of approach that he takes, which I really like, is rather than just guessing or having sweeping blanket statements that appeal, that apply to everybody, is we do provocation testing first of all. So the provocation testing is going to tell me exactly what that person's pain triggers and aggravators are, and what their injury is, but also what they can and cannot tolerate at the moment. So a good example for that, I've got a guy, Khan, that comes in now. He's into his boxing and rugby and likes to, do some deadlifts and squats and things. He's got an end plate fracture, which is caused by compression damage. So most people, if they're already in the gym, I say to them, look, just back off the weights, still keep moving. So I don't want you to lose your abilities and your skills, but be careful. With him, because he's highly sensitive to compression damage, I had to take out all of his lifting for the minute until that bone can remodel and that end plate can heal itself. Once it's healed, we can start to load him again. It'll be fine.
Absolutely.
But again, you've got to test for that to know, because I like to keep people as active as possible. But sometimes, very, very rare instances, you do need to take some stuff out just to let the bone heal and remodel itself. And then you can go back to loaded lifting and it'll be fine.
What's your standard protocol when it comes to, or do you have a standard protocol when it comes to testing for low back pain, or do you find it differs on person to person?
So I've got I use the Mcgill provocation testing system, which is really good. But then also you got to talk to people and understand, because sometimes people's damage isn't necessarily done in the gym. It's just the gym is highlighting it.
Yeah, good point.
So with the provocation testing and then talking to people, you can find out if there's patterns to their injury. So say, for example, you might have someone there's a lot of people now that work from home, right, because of lockdown and various other things. So they don't move for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Straight away.
So what ends up happening is they end up, they could be sort of in the act, fairly active otherwise, but because they don't move for 8 to 10 hours a day, they've now become what I call a glass tree, in that their back's very fragile and also very stiff at the same time because they just don't move for long hours. So, if I talk to someone, I'm going to say, what do you do day to day? Are there times a day when the pain feels worse? Is it worse in the morning? Is it worse in the evening? Does it just depend? Are there certain activities or movements that set it off? Are there certain exercises that set it off? And the more information I can get, the more context I've got, especially with the provocation testing. Then from there, at least then I'm making, I've got a decent hypothesis. I'm not just taking random guesses. I can still start with somewhere, but again, you still have to refine it as you go along. So again, that's why each person that comes in, the people ask me, what's the standard routine? So there is no standard routine. And then I'm going to test you first of all, ask you a load of questions, and then we'll find out exactly what's going on, and then go from there.
But I absolutely love that approach, because I think the main point you highlighted is asking questions. How many times have we've all gone to physios and they're just like, nah, this is it. We're not going to ask you any questions about your daily life. Now, and as you said before, it could be just highlighted in the gym, but the injury could have happened, at home, doing the most basic thing.
That's it.
Yeah,
because again, especially with things like disc bulges and herniations, they don't just go because it's a Tuesday. It takes hundreds and hundreds of goofy repetitions to break down, because the disc is actually quite robust. If you look at the structure of a disc, it takes hundreds of repetitions to actually break them down. So more often than not, people might have got faulty stuff in the gym that's highlighting it, but again, there's going to be stuff during the day-to-day they don't realize, which is contributing to that problem. And I like to think of an idea of like a bank account. So the lower that bank account is, or if it goes into overdraft, you're going to have an implosion, and the back pain is going to flare up. So what are the movements we need to modify, remove, and improve to minimize withdrawals in that bank account? And what are the movement strategies and exercises that build that bank account? So the bigger your bank account is, the less chance of having a back pain episode.
Absolutely.
100%. And then, how long have you had this facility in Brisbane? Have you been operating solely in Brisbane for this role, bro, or did it kick off in Sydney?
Just for this place I've got now, just literally for just over a year, because we actually moved up last February, just before COVID hit. I'm sure you guys are aware there was like all those restrictions about you can't have a gym open, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it was sort of 6 months of sitting on my hands, and then finally sort of last October I got it kind of open and up and running. But before that I'd been working in a few different gyms in Sydney. Sort of dotted around. I worked at a CrossFit gym, like CrossFit Athletic, if anyone knows that one. It used to be quite a big CrossFit gym. And a few places up in eastern suburbs, Bondi Junction.
So did you start this program down in Sydney and then bring it up with you, or was it something that you just like, nah, see change, let's go? So it was something I started in Sydney because of, again, my experience with the fuckwits that are supposed to help people. And I've just been sort of refining it in Sydney because there's so many different people who've got back injuries, and it's, to a degree, when I first started, I think I was a little bit naive in that, most people that are going to come and see me are just old blokes over 50. But
not the case. So in Sydney, I had a couple of 18, 19-year-olds with MRIs and disc bulges that would give you nightmares.
Yeah. Do you put much when you get your hands on an
I've
MRI?
got to teach them.
So when you get your hands in MRI or you get to see it, do you put much stock in looking at the images themselves, or you base it more on the movement?
When I first started, I did.
Yep.
What I tend to do now is, if someone brings them in, I just say, I'm not going to look at them because that was a snapshot of. Because sometimes we'll bring in MRIs from a year ago, and I'm like, it's going to be different now.
Yeah.
What I tend to do is not look at that stuff, especially the reports, because some of the reports are highly dubious what they put in there. But I'll run the provocation testing, and usually the provocation testing it will start to zero in, and I can almost pretty much 80% certainty now is I can tell them what's going to be written on that report by doing the provocation testing.
Yeah. Because there's
So
enough.
I can say, oh, you've got a bulge here, and it goes out towards the left, or it goes out towards the right, or it does this, or it does that.
Yeah. So I say because there's enough stuff out there. I think if you're MRI'd, a certain amount of backs, 10 backs running around the street, you would probably find some sort of degeneration or bulge
100%.
in backs that feel normal, right?
You mentioned a key term there, degeneration.
Yeah.
So that's a if a radiographer puts that in a report, I don't mind because it's not their job to decipher what's going on with the back. They just say that part of your back looks a bit gammy. It's degenerated. So degeneration is like a throwaway term, I guess, which just means it's a bit worn out, but I don't know why. Yeah. So if a physio or a chiro or an osteo says that, then we've got major fucking problems because they're not doing their job. Asshole, don't tell me it's degenerative. Tell me exactly what it is. Is it a disc bulge? Is it a herniation?
Yeah,
Is
right.
it spondylolisthesis? Is it retrolithesis? Is it stenosis? What is it? Don't just give me an umbrella term. Your job is to know the specifics and help the person you're trying to help know the specifics. Huh?
Absolutely, it's like the.
But back to your point, you probably would. But that's if something's common, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want it, right?
Oh yeah, you'd rather not it.
100%.
So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of people that have got disc bulges that won't have disc pain. There's a lot of people that have got, back pain that don't have disc bulges. But it doesn't mean to say either or is necessarily what you want. It's just that for certain people, once you get a bulge, it's going to get to a threshold point where it's going to start to cause a major problem.
Now, I want to talk, because you mentioned something about before, like obviously discs just don't go on a Tuesday. It's that constant repetition of... And we see a lot of disc injuries in the lumbar spine. Now, I want to try and, gear this conversation towards Buttwink. Now, where do you sit on Buttwink?
So Buttwink. So we'll go back to disc. We'll go back to how we create disc bulges and herniations. So we need two things for disc bulges and herniations. We need compression. And we also need flexion. So if you imagine like a jam or a jelly donut for the Americans out there, if I compress the front of that jam donut enough, I'm going to force the jam out the back, right? It's probably not going to happen on one squeeze, but if I keep doing it, eventually it's going to force out because it's like a hydraulic force. It's the same for the nucleus in your disc. So you need a lot of compression and flexion over extended amounts of time or repetitions to start causing a problem. So if you go into Buttwink, let's say a body weight squat, it's probably not enough compression to start causing a problem. If, however, you go into Buttwink for loads of repetitions with 200 kilos plus on your back, it's probably going to cause a problem at some point. Now, there are some genetic outliers that probably, for whatever weird reason, have got a higher tolerance to that not causing a problem. It could just be that somehow they freakishly kind of distribute that wear all the way through evenly through their lumbar. Because normally when people have bulges, they have like one or two, right? Like L5S1 is probably the most common. There are some genetic outliers. There is a guy somewhere on YouTube. Someone sent it to him. I did get his name, but he just revels in deadlifting with disgusting form, but somehow seems to be getting away with it. But that's not to say that we want everyone to deadlift like that, right? Because probably for 95% of the people in the if they started deadlifting like that, it would cause a problem. So again, it just depends. There are some freaks out there that can lift with heavy weights with disgusting form and somehow manage to get away with it. If we go risk versus reward for the people we're training, it's probably a little bit too risky to be a little bit too laissez-faire with that stuff.
Yeah. Stewart Mcgill, he has a reference.
Again, it depends.
Yeah. So Stewart Mcgill has a reference. I'm sure I've read him say, he goes, you can bend a credit card a certain amount of times, but eventually that credit card will break.
That's it. So what are you specifically referring to? Because there's a thing now with physios, you might have seen it, where they talk about, doesn't matter how you there is no one perfect technique, which I disagree with, because there is a perfect technique for each person. You just have to know that person. They say your body basically adapts. So if we're talking about adaptation in the spine, we look at three things. So can your muscles adapt to you lifting with shit form? Yes. Can your vertebrae, your bones, your transverse processes become stronger and calcify to adapt to lifting with shit form? Yes. Your discs, not so much, because once you start to delaminate those fibers, that collagen, it starts to break down. It's starting to break down. All you can do is rest it and let it heal up. It's never going to really adapt to being in horrible form. So again, when people say stuff like your body will adapt, again, I like to press them for specifics. Tell me exactly what you mean by adaptation, because different structures in your body aren't going to respond the same way to being in kind of flexion like that. And certain things just won't, they won't adapt. And if, certain things as well, for example, again, Mcgill talks about like a continuum of development for your spine. So you can be super stiff and strong on one side. So that would be like a power lifter or a strongman competitor, right? Able to bear great load, lift weight, and the back stays nice and strong and stable. And the very far end, you'd have like a contortionist, right? They would bend their body up into a pretzel, twist and turn, do all kinds of crazy stuff. But you wouldn't expect them to have a bit of deadlift 200 kilos, right?
Yeah.
And at the same token, you wouldn't expect the strong man or the power lifter to be able to bend and twist the same as a contortionist. So instinctively we know why, but let's get specific. Why is that? So in the contortionist, they've developed the collagen fibers in their disc to be very flexible but weak under a compressive load. And they've also stretched out the muscles that join the segments of the spine. So that gives them that ability to really flex and extend. But the trade-off is, if they try and lock their spine into stiffness, it's now very limited because the body has adapted to the far side of that continuum. True. And it's same for a strong man. They're the completely other side. Their muscles have developed to be thick and strong. The bones have adapted to take the forces from those muscles, so it locks together. But now you've traded off some of your flexibility in your lumbar.
Wow. How did you come across?
That's
No, you're right, bro. I was just going to say, how did you come across Mr. Stewart Mcgill? And did you get the opportunity?
I'd heard of him for years before.
And did you get to meet him as well through the courses?
So I'd heard of. Yeah, I have actually. Yeah, twice. There's a funny story there as well. I'd heard of him before. I'm trying to think where I first heard of it. It might have been a chiropractor I knew years ago. A guy called Rich Carhide. He's fairly sort of on tap with stuff. He's fairly interesting for a chiro. He's kind of a bit out there sometimes. But he'd mentioned that he'd studied him at uni. So I thought, I got one of his books. I made the mistake of buying, because he's got like a few different books, and a couple of them are super dry, research-based, real heavy, real sloggy to get through. I made the mistake of buying one of those first of all, and it took me about 6 months to read it. I still, probably understood half of what was in there. Then I got, I think there's a book called Building Ultimate Back Pain Performance, which is a bit more, it's aimed more at strength and conditioning coaches. So that one I could gel with that a bit more. I bought a DVD. Got into that sort of stuff. But I didn't really, I sort of was aware of it, but until I'd done my own back in, I didn't really see the true value of it, if that makes sense. Because once you go through it yourself, you're like, oh, fucking hell, hold on. I couldn't walk 2 weeks ago and now I can, and I've got control over my pain.
That's pretty good.
So it was like, oh shit, there's something to this. But I have met him twice, because he's been to Sydney twice. So I think the first time was 2015, 2016. There's a funny story here. So when he first came, there was only about 20 people in the classroom. I walked in and they're all chiros, osteos, physios, a couple of surgeons, I think, that sort of thing. Of course, I'm a geek, so I go right to the front, sit on the front row, get my little notepad out. Right, I'm going to absorb everything this guy says like a sponge. Anyway, I'm sat there, and I'm aware that this shadow is looming over me as it walks in, and I look up, and I swear blind, my first instinct was a giant bikie enforcer has walked into the wrong room, because there's this guy who's 150 kilos. His hair shaved in a mohawk.
It's fucking Andrew
He's
Locke.
got chains hanging off of him. And he goes very politely, yeah, it was. He goes, oh, excuse me, is anyone sitting? I said, oh, no, you can sit next to me. He sits down, he goes, oh, hello, I'm Andrew. Takes out his little spectacles, takes out his little notebook. And I was just like, what is this?
Yeah. I was like, as soon as you said shaved
That's
head.
the day that I met... shaved, that big mohawk, everything, chains hanging off him. And that was the day I met Andrew Locke, and that was it was a day for me, like, that was a real, whenever people talk about books and covers, because we would be talking about something, because we were right next to Stewart as he's presenting, we have little breaks, and then Andrew would ask questions that were so technical, and would try such a deep answer that Stewart Mcgill would sit there for about 5 minutes thinking about what he just asked and what the answer was going to be.
Wow. And you're just sitting there
So
just
it was
taking
crazy.
it in.
I see this guy come in, who you'd assume was like this giant thug. It was actually, no, he's like one of the most technical physios you're ever going to meet your entire life.
As soon as you said shaved head and mohawk, I was like, there's only one bloke rocking that sort of outfit.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go see a physio, I think Doc Locke's the kind of guy you want to see. I think you know you're in the right place when you got a dude that big.
But again, that's it. But again, it's because, as a strength and conditioning coach, a lot of your credence and, your caliber and how people trust you is you've got to have done what you're trying to help people do, if that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah.
So, a strong strength and conditioning coach who's got experience, people buy into that. And I think with Andrew is that, he's had injuries. I'm pretty sure I think he's actually missing one of the discs in his spine.
Oh, wow.
He's had shoulder injuries, he had all sorts of problems, but because he lifts big heavy weights and he competes and he trains in a gym, he does stuff, people go, okay, this guy not only has the theory, but I know he's got the in the trenches experience with actually solving these problems. So therefore I know that, he's probably got most of the solutions and the tools I'm going to need for sure.
100%. I think that's what makes a good coach, physio, chiropractor, is that if they've walked the walk and then you see them talk the talk, like it just marries up the two, and it does build trust and competence for them.
It must be a pretty rewarding job for you, bro.
Again, especially with...
I was going to say, it must be a pretty rewarding job for you, bro.
Yeah, it can be. It
I mean,
can be...
you literally got people coming in
for sure. Like
absolutely cooked, and you're fixing them.
Yeah. Well, it's rewarding and kind of frustrating and heartbreaking at times as well. Like I've got one guy that comes in, Roscoe. He's an ex-police officer from Darwin. Got a back injury at work, and he's had a 12-year journey that would crush the average bloke. But he's had 7 spinal surgeries before he came to see me, and 2 of those surgeries was to correct. One of the surgeons had to put in a man-made disc. He actually put it in slightly wonky, so it was just pinching on the nerve.
Fuck.
Jesus.
But he's had a fucking nightmare of a story, which is heartbreaking to hear. But then, he had this thing where his thing originally was, I just want to stand up out of a chair without being in pain.
Yep.
So he spent a couple of weeks working on it, worked on what his problems were. Right, these are the exercises we need to work on. About 6 weeks in, and he was just like, mate, I can stand up now. There isn't that nagging pain there all of the time.
Oh, wow.
He goes, that's the first time in like 12 years I haven't had that.
Wow.
So it's rewarding, but it's really fucking annoying when you hear what's happened to people. Like he was in these kind of insurance-backed rehab programs where he'd be in a room with 5 other people that all had completely different injuries to them. But all doing exactly the same exercises.
Yep.
But how do you...
So he's in there with guys with neck and shoulder injuries. He's got back injury. He's doing the same stuff. It's like, well, what the fuck's going on here?
But how do you see that changing? Like, obviously, with people like yourself at the forefront, Stewart Mcgill, Andrew Locke, like all those types of people, what needs to change from your perspective? Because it's so common and so many people are getting it wrong.
I think the only way to do it now, I mean, Andrew Locke he's taken the route of educating his professionals better, right?
Yeah.
He's got his United Health education platform, so that's more aimed at like strength coaches and physios, trying to give them a better understanding as to what's going on, which is a way to do it. The way I'm going to try and do it is I'm just trying to better educate the average person. So I put stuff on YouTube. I've got the Back Pain University system that's online for average people. Yeah. So I just try and educate people themselves. If they can kind of understand the principles of the problem, then they're going to be able to, in theory, make better choices, not only how they manage it, but if they do go and see someone, they can tell pretty quickly if that person's full of shit or not.
100%. There needs to be a vetting process a lot, and I think the buck ultimately stops. Like, we're trusting people with, we're going to these professionals for the advice, but they're not doing, like, straight up, they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing...
some of it as well is you've got very curious business practices. So I'll give you an example. Like, one of my boys in Sydney, before seeing me, had been seeing a physio, and what the physio would do is it was, I don't know, $80 for half an hour or something. But you'd go into like a little room, and he had 3 of these little rooms, and he'd come in for 5 minutes, hook you up to a machine, and he'd go off and see someone else, and then come back in 5 minutes and just check on you. So at any given moment, he was having 3 people that he was, looking after for half-hour sessions, $80 each. I was just like, fuck. But it's 3 people at a time. Fuck. So it's $80 times 3. That's but good. You're not actually doing anything. I'm just like, what? So and then a lot of practices now is you'll have a physio practice. You'll have a practice manager or an owner, and they'll just recruit fresh out university physios or chiros who got no business experience, and say, hey, we'll give you a job, we'll pay you, I don't know, 70 grand, 80 grand a year, off you go. And of course they just book them out back to back all day long.
Burn them out, cook them.
And just hammer them into the ground. But also they're not doing any like development. So they're basically just using exactly what they learned at university, which could be from 30 years ago or worse. And not actually getting a chance to develop.
That's got to be part of the problem as well. Like, for those guys stepping in the industry, they only know what they know, right? So if their uni that's teaching them their stuff, and then they're out there, they haven't been given potentially the right tools to be able to help.
I think, well, this is it. But again, I think a lot of it is because they're taught in quite a dogmatic way.
Yeah.
So, what they get taught is basically sacrosanct, and anything else is just stupid. But it depends.
100%.
Like, the way I look at exercises or rehab strategies or soft tissue work is they're all just tools in a toolkit, right? So if someone comes in, what's the actual problem? What have I got to fix? What do I think are the best tools to do that job?
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't think like that. They just kind of like, this is the stuff I use, and everything has to be based around that stuff. So I would say, well, take a step back, be objective. Say something goes wrong with your car, right? Your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic, okay? So I was mate, my car's not starting, And then he started ranting and raving that he doesn't use screwdrivers, right? You'd be like, mate, what the fuck are you on? Like, what? But for some reason, when it's like rehab and strength, that people don't seem to think like that. It's weird. It's just exercises are tools.
Yep.
Don't make it weird. Just pick the right tool for the job. That's all you got to do.
And probably sometimes simple is best.
What's that?
I says sometimes simple is best too. Like, how often have you send?
That's right. Yeah, I generally, if I look at someone's problem and I might have got a few different solutions, if I'm not sure, as a general guideline, I'll pick the simple answer first.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, okay, now I'll get more fandangles. Right, let's add in some more technical bits and pieces and kind of build from there.
I think way too many people start too complex to seem different, to seem to stand out, whatever. And then really, mate, you could have just done a bird dog and you'd be right.
Yeah.
That's it. But again, I think as well, what doesn't happen is now in the age of social media, and because back pain is such a thing, I've started to see things in my Instagram feed about back pain. And I'm like, when it was people just running around in hot pants and yoga pants, just doing weird exercises, I was all right. But now they're starting to talk about, do this one exercise for back pain, this sort of jazz. I'm just like, I don't know about that. That doesn't sit well with me.
Now, the thing I'm always curious about that comes with injury, there's the physical and then the emotional, psychological side of things. How do you find your clients or people in general go battling and challenging with that?
Again, answer that question is it depends. Everyone's different, and I'll make a point here. Is because I used to run these ads in Sydney when I first opened up in Sydney, saying, on Facebook, saying, Bondi back pain program, fix your back. And people go, you can't fix all the backs. You can't. It's impossible. And I'd say, people say you can't help everybody, and I'd say that's true, but not for the reasons you think.
Yeah.
So I've had people that have had. I had one guy, example, a guy Andy years ago. He used to be a tree surgeon, and he was cutting down a tree in Sydney, and they had the two sort of strops either end of the limb.
Yeah.
One of the strops fell out, so that the log swung and then swung down, and smashed him in the back. It's like that scene in Predator, where that giant log smashes the guy to pieces. He got smashed about 200 kilos of wood in the spine, fractured loads of bones in his spine. Right?
Jesus.
If you looked at his MRI, it would haunt you for your life. Like there's bits of metal everywhere and jaggy bits, and just looked horrendous. But he turned around really quickly because he had the right mentality.
Yep.
And I've had people, conversely to that have had tiny injuries, like barely anything, which has taken forever because they're not in the right headspace. Either they just don't take it seriously enough, or they do have a slightly defeatist attitude with it.
Yep.
And how many?
So again, it just depends. That's one of those things that I assess when people come in. I assess what their psychology is like with it, and how am I going to try and coach them out of that psychological hole with it.
Yep.
And how much do you find that people hold on to their injury as a part of them? Like, I think we've seen a lot of people, they get addicted to their injuries or the excuses they have based off that. Like, that's another barrier for you to overcome. And I'm very interested to see how you overcome it, because I know for a lot of times people come to me with their injury and they've been cleared by physio, chiro, myself. They can move great, but they're still like, I'm still getting a bit of pain here. I'm like, are you? Are you actually? Because how do you come with that? How do you overcome that barrier?
So I think for me, my most useful tool, I guess, with that, again, going back to Mcgill stuff, is that provocation testing, because it gives us some objectivity over it straight away. So I can put them into a bad position that makes it worse, and then change position. It's almost like an on-off switch.
Yep.
Once suddenly people realise that they have got that sort of level of control, because a lot of it is they feel they've got no control over it. Like it's like a phantom or a spectre that just jumps on their back one day versus another. It's not there. Whereas if you make them aware that no matter the back feels good or bad, it's only responding to how they're choosing to use it. And if you start to, on those first couple of sessions, make them aware of what the rules of the game are for their back, and they start to get that little bit of understanding and control over it, it starts to change their sort of awareness and that kind of, I guess, that identity like you were discussing before.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, it doesn't happen for everybody. So the way that I get around it is I'm generally really fucking blunt with people. I don't sugarcoat anything. I'm just really straight to the point. Because when people come in, they say, if they've especially been training me for a while, everyone will say this. They might come in and they might have 6 weeks of doing really well, and then they'll say, I had a bit of a flare-up. And I'll be like, well, what did you do? Oh, nothing. Well, you must have done something because it was fine before, now it's not. And I'll sit there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, doesn't matter how long it takes, until they'll eventually go, I was in the car for 8 hours, or I was working on the car for 8 hours, or I was sat in a bad couch, or it was something. Because again, you have to give them that, as much as I hate saying this, because makes me want to vomit, but it makes people empowered if they understand what's going on, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So the big thing with back pain is people feel bad because they feel that they've got no influence and no control over it. But if you can give them that objective awareness of these are the things that make your back feel worse, these are the things that make your back feel better, then it starts to kind of calm them down, and they can take a little bit of a step back from it emotionally.
100%. I like that.
And just be really fucking blunt.
Breaking down their journey for them is pretty good, bro. Like that. And then obviously something I'm sure you'd get across them. It's not, you won't find it to be a linear progression. It doesn't just go from real bad to real better. It's going to be, there will be downs and ups along the way.
And again, it's sometimes I get people that do, and again, it's not the injury, it's
The head.
yeah. So I always say to people, there's two halves to your story. So one is the obvious bit, which is the exercises and the rehab work we're going to do. The other half of it is becoming aware of what I call their pain aggravators, or Gill calls them the pain triggers. So what are your little bad habits that you've got that drain that bank account and sensitize you to pain?
Yeah.
Because you can't have one without the other. If you just try and exercise way out of a problem without actually addressing the problem, you're not really going to get anywhere. But if they understand what those little bad habits are, and if they understand that if those bad habits suddenly return or increase, it's going to cause a problem, then they start to have a real grasp on solving the problem long term. And that's the point I say to people, working with me, is I'm not just going to shotgun a load of exercises at you and off you go. I want you to understand the rules of the game for your back. So in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, you know how to keep it pain-free. And if something goes wrong, you know why it's gone wrong and you know what to do to fix it. So one of the things I like to say to people, even in the first session, is I'll say to them, you'll understand your back pain so well that if I see you hobbling down the street like a hunchback in a year's time, I will say to you, you deserve your back pain.
I love that.
And people are like, what? I said, well, what I mean is you'll understand it so well that you know that you've either done something you shouldn't have done or not enough of the things you should have been doing.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
I like that a lot, bro. And what about for yourself? I mean, you've come out the other side of having 3 discs fly at the back of your jelly out of the biscuit. How's training and life for you these days, bro, now that you're there?
I mean, it's fine. So again, I just hold myself accountable. So, I like to lift heavy, awkward things, and I like to train jiu-jitsu. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for about 4 years now.
Yep, lovely.
So to do those two things well, I have to make sure my bank account is big enough. So for easy numbers' sake, I'd say the average person, if you've just got an average job, office job, you want $100 in your bank account each day to keep yourself pain-free.
Yep.
If you just like gym training, more like 200. If you're trying to lift heavy, awkward things, 300.
Yep.
If you're trying to do a full-blown contact sport with a person who's trying to strangle you to death, you need more like $600.
Yeah.
So all you've got to do is just make sure I just hold myself accountable. I don't waste that bank account,
Yep.
and I keep doing the exercises that I know that build that bank account and keep it where it needs to be to keep me out of trouble. If I do those two things, then I'm fine. But again, even for me, if I get complacent, if I'm like working on a motorbike or something for a few hours in a bad position, I'll feel it start to creep in as that bank account gets a little bit low. Like it will come back.
And that's a good testament, for you to be able to use yourself again as an example for people, is that you've obviously had a bad injury, you've done the work, you continue to do the work, which I really like, because I think a lot of people just do the work and then, okay, I'm good to go now, but they need to continue, and you're still back doing the stuff you love, plus throwing some jits in there, which, getting twisted up, that can be bad on backs if you're not right.
Mate, it can be, mate. Especially if you've got, because I train at Limo's Jiu-Jitsu down the road from here.
Lovely.
And we've got a mighty black belt, Nick, who's, I've got to guess, he's about 140 kilos. And when he's got his pressure on top of you, it's just like you're spitting bits of bone out and all sorts, like you're in bits. But if my back was in any way fragile, it would show up like on that straight away. Straight away.
Absolutely love that.
And do you find a lot of your clients and a lot of people out there, they can get back to doing the things they love doing, like yourself? That there is that, there's not a limit
absolutely.
for
So again, it's two principles are, one is just got to build and maintain a bank account big enough to do the things you want to do. But then also we need to look at the things that you do. Are there certain movements in the thing that you do that are causing a problem, and are there ways that we can refine those movement skills to make them, more back sparing for you? So an obvious one would be like, if you saw someone that was deadlifting and their back just kept caving in, kept rounding, and they had back problems, there's a software issue with how you do a deadlift. Perhaps we need to change your technique. So for some people, it could be like, just change your stance, go to a sumo stance, and all of a sudden it's easier to keep your back in a safer position. So it could be just simple things like that will let you do the things you want to do without, getting you off that kind of injury cycle, re-injury cycle all the time.
100%. Because that can always be a challenge for everyone coming back from injuries, that like, I won't be able to do the X thing that I enjoyed doing that maybe caused it or was part of the cause. but be able to give someone some hope like that.
Might not be
sometimes.
necessarily the same way, because
Yep.
you might need to change it, or you might need to change some of the volume, or it might be just little changes. But
Yep.
generally, I'd say 99% of the time you can do, unless it's anything really crazy. But yeah,
I like it,
most
bro.
people for sure. And that's what I like to do as well, because I think it's important as a coach is, because I say, like, when you first start rehab, things like, Stewart Mcgill's big 3 exercises, they're like maths homework in that they're boring, they're hard, you have to really concentrate. And if people go into that thinking, this is all I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, they're not going to do it. But if you say to them, no, I just want to get them to a certain standard, and then eventually we'll just drop them down to like a small warm-up, and then you can go back to your deadlifting and your squatting or your jiu-jitsu, whatever it is that you want to do. Then that's the success as a coach. You get people to buy in with your program and stay the course with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. Now, bro, towards the end of these things, we have 10 very random questions for you. This is where we find out the real you. We find out all the things that are important. Now, for the first question I have for you, it is, you were given the opportunity to rename the apple. What would you like to now call it?
As in the fruit or the brand?
The fruit.
Ooh.
The fruit apple.
The fruit.
Yes.
Round and crunchy.
Lovely. Does chocolate belong in the fridge?
Yes.
Excellent.
Good.
What do you wish you could spend more time doing?
More time with my son, I think.
I like
For
it.
sure.
What can you do today that you couldn't do 5 years ago?
Swing a 92-kilo kettlebell.
Holy shit. That is fucking a lot.
That's legit.
So as far as I'm aware, that's the heaviest commercially available one. And the reason I swung it is I saw Brian Shaw, the world's strongest competitor. He's got one. He swung it for 10 reps. So the next day I swung it for 12, just to prove a point.
Hey!
Fucking dope.
I like it. What activity do you do that you lose track of time?
Jiu-jitsu, for sure.
Oh, yeah. You find a dead body in a hotel room. What are you going to do?
Back away slowly and quietly and make sure no one knows that I'm involved.
Oh, you killed it. What's the most hated mode of transport?
Scooters. No, I don't mean the stand-on scooters. I mean the sort of half motorbike type scooters. I hate them.
Oh, great that.
What colour is a mirror?
Whatever colour you wish it to be.
What superpower do you not want?
Oh, that's a good one. X-ray vision, I think, because you'd see things you don't ever want to see, I think. Curse.
Now, this gives us some real insight into you, sir. You going to fold the toilet paper or are you going to scrunch it pre-wipe?
I sort of do a bit of both. I fold it, then a little bit of scrunch, just to get that perfect kind of
fucking
contact
combo.
and purchase.
I haven't tried the combo.
Never considered it combo before.
No, it's
Try the combo. It's the way forward.
yeah. Fuck, there you go. And that's coming from a back expert, so
Yeah,
it's
back
got to be
proof.
true. Yeah, it's back proof.
There you go.
Brother, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and thank you for giving up your time. And obviously, it is a public holiday up here in Brisbane, so give yourself a shout out. Where can people find you? Where can people find more information about what you do?
So my website is just brianellicott.com, but I'm on Instagram, on Facebook as well. And for those that can't sort of, get in for one-on-one sessions or online sessions, I've got the Back Pain University, which is linked to my website as well, which is kind of designed as a program to help people kind of solve their own problems, if that makes sense.
That's awesome, man. I
fucking
mean,
love it.
we'll chuck up all those in the show notes so that people can find you easy.
Lovely.
Mate, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much. And we'll
Thanks,
chat
brother.
soon, brother.
See you later,
Thanks for
bro.
having me.
Thank
bro.
you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
That was good,
Cheers.
bro.
All good?
That's it.
Yep,
bro.
that's all good, bro. So that stopped recording.